Welcome parents, thank you for coming tonight. We're going to share a few things about the past test that's coming up. The first thing we're going to look at is a PowerPoint called Testing 1, 2, 3. How can parents help students be prepared? Good. Okay. Make sure students eat a nutritious breakfast or arrive at school in time to eat breakfast. And they need to be here between 7:30, 7:45 so they won't have to rush to get back in time. Make sure students have a pleasant and stress-free morning. Make sure that you give them positive comments. I know you're going to do well today. Try not to stress them out.
And I know in my household that's hard, it's get up and getting hair fixed and that kind of stuff. But those mornings try to make sure it's okay. You got a test. Don't
Maybe
be
get up
stressing.
5 or 10 minutes early so you don't have to rush.
And on past tests, you won't have to worry about your computer shutting off, will you? He said that stressed him out big time. It kept shutting off.
Make sure students dress comfortable, perhaps in layers, so that they are able to adjust to the temperature in the room. Maybe just
It might get a little
hoodie or-
cool,
yeah.
so it
Yeah,
might
a
be
lot
a
of
jacket.
it, the way our air conditioner unit, depends on where you sit. Like here you might be cold, but up there you might be hot. It just kind of depends on how it blows in the room. I usually tell mom to bring a jacket.
Mhm. Parents can encourage your children to be confident and do their best. All that positive commenting. Parents can stay positive about the test. One of the most important things parents can do is take an interest in their children's schoolwork. Thank you so much for joining us tonight and showing interest. We appreciate all of your support. And now I think Miss Atkinson's, who's going first, Anderson or Atkinson?
We'll pull it up. We kind of do it together.
Yeah, we just go with the flow.
Okay, so that's just kind of giving you a heads up of what to expect with the past test coming up on Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. And so the students will be working on the writing prompt. They will be assessed with their writing, and then one day, and then another day they will be assessed with the editing passage. And so we're going to go over the writing prompt and just give you an overview of some of the tips that we give the students and how we teach them to look at the writing prompt, and so that they'll know what they are expected to write about. We don't want them to get there on the day of the test and be like this student, poor Garth. It says, Garth, I see by your bubble that you can't think of anything to write about. And you can see he has nothing in the bubble. He is having a mind blank, brain freeze.
We have a plan for that.
So we don't want this to happen to you. So we have a plan to keep them focused and to help them to be able to look at that prompt and know exactly what's expected of them. Hey, Tommy. That's all right. Come on in. Phineas and Ferb, those are probably one of my favorite little cartoons that my son has grown up watching. The most important thing to remember is if you're off target, he says you get an F. In other words, you want to make sure that you're writing to the prompt, that you're on target, you're writing on topic. So you must write to the prompt. All right, Miss Anderson.
Okay. As far as looking at the prompt, this is where, if you're drawing a blank, this is where you get your information from. We call it analyzing the prompt, the format, the audience, the topic, and the purpose. What is it? When you look at this prompt and you read it, and it will be read aloud, the prompt will be. You need to see, okay, what am I doing? You've been chosen by a company to make a new product. Your product could be a food, a toy, a game, or any other item you want. Write a report for the company that describes your idea for a new product and explains how it can be used. So what are you writing? A report. We always teach them to circle these key words. All right, who are you writing? For the company. What is it about? Your idea for the product and how can it be used? And then why are you writing this? You're writing to explain. Okay. So that's, we call this prompt analysis, once they break down that prompt and look at those different parts and look at those key words to make sure that they have actually used those back in their writing. That kind of gives them a place to start.
And it gives them a guide, so they know what type of writing they're doing, what purpose, and they can, then they're on topic.
And
I'm
you
sorry,
talk
Lauren,
on
I went too far.
Go
Turn
back. Yeah.
That's it.
Is that what I want?
Let's see.
That's what Strauss said.
It
Just
is
skip
touchy, I think
Yeah.
I skipped a couple.
I need a new mouse.
Yeah, you have been having trouble with that.
Yeah.
All right, the format that fourth grade would be writing in could possibly be a letter, a story, or an essay. Pretty much a narrative type of thing. An audience, your peers, your teachers, your principals told mine today, you need to understand that you don't need to use text. You're not on a cell phone, no LOL, no that kind of thing. Sometimes they tend to think they're talking to a friend, and they need to be a little more formal.
I
with
tell
that.
them, the little old lady that's grading your paper, wherever she might be, she doesn't understand text messages or slang or any of those
She
words.
may not have an iPhone, so that's just somebody else that doesn't know. You know, so we tell them it needs to be a little more formal, that it's gonna be graded. You need to make sure that you're talking like you would more to an adult. What it's about, we've had a memory, a country, uniforms in schools. They usually have something that kids can generate ideas from, something that they can pull from. Usually, if it's not something that they have firsthand knowledge about, it's something they can make up. Describe your favorite food, something that they have plenty of experience about. And then your purpose, we always say it's your goal. Are you persuading someone? Are you informing them? Are you entertaining them? What is the purpose for your writing?
Okay. Here's another example, but I think you kind of get the idea of it. We're going to practice with the next one. I still do. All right. So here's a prompt, and let's practice that together. Suppose that some visitors arrived who have never experienced winter. Write an explanation of what winter is like and introduce winter to these visitors. So if we go back, what is our format? Doesn't really tell us, but what would our format be? What kind of writing are we doing?
Are you
What does
writing?
it tell us to write? Look up there, guys. What are we writing?
Would you be writing a letter to someone? Okay, that would be our topic. We're going to write about winter.
Mhm.
Okay, so we're going to write to explain what winter is, right? So that's our purpose. So we're going to write a report or an explanation of what winter is like. Okay, now, who are we writing to? Who's our audience?
People who haven't experienced winter.
Right.
The
So
visitors, whoever they
Tommy,
are.
that's right. When those are visitors who I am writing to, who's going to be reading this, I'm going to expect them not to know anything about winter. So it's not going to be that you're writing to your friend Tommy, who's been here and experienced the snow apocalypse that we just had a few weeks ago, right? It's going to be someone who's never experienced winter here. But see, now we have that background knowledge of the snowstorm, the 2 snowstorms we've had this year, to draw from, so we can use that experience, that background experience, in our writing to help us to explain that, what winter is like to someone who's never experienced winter. So we have to assume that this person doesn't know winter. They've grown up where it's summer all the time, and we're really jealous of that, right?
When my class did this, one of my kids said, "Can I write to an alien?" And I said, "If they've never experienced winter, yes, you can." I mean, there's nothing in here that would prohibit that. As long as you explain what winter is like to these visitors. They've got it covered.
Okay, one more?
Yeah. We did this one today. Think about what you most like to eat for dinner. Describe as many details as possible, including what it looks like, smells, and tastes like. In your response, use language that appeals to as many senses as possible. We really took this one and broke it down. First thing you're going to be writing, can you guess what type of writing?
About dinner?
A dinner. What are you going to be doing about dinner?
Describing.
There you go. You're going to describe it, so that's where your details come in. And one of my kids said, hey, I could do a paragraph on what it looks like, and then one about what it smells like, and one about what it tastes like. And I said, there you go. You got those 3 paragraphs, an introduction and a
They do.
conclusion.
They think about those 3 things, that would work perfect.
Weird. I said, you own it. you got it good to go. So, in your response, use language that appeals to as many senses. And I even had one say something about what it feels like. And I said, I don't eat with my hands. They said, but you can feel it in your mouth. And I said, okay, you got a point. So this would be a descriptive piece talking about what they like to do. This is something all kids can write about. The confusion that I had today, though, was that they wanted to do more than one. And that's where they wanted to say, I like to eat this, and I like to eat this, and I like to eat this, and they didn't get into the...
What you most like, so you
What
have to
you
choose
most
that
like.
one and stick to it. You
Yes.
might have more than one. That is a difficult thing that a lot of students struggle with. They want to end up, we call that listing. I like this, and I like this, and I like this. But it wants you to choose one. You may like more than one, but choose one and just stick with that and use that for your description. You can use another one for another day.
We had to have some guiding there to make sure that they understood what they most liked.
Okay, so how is this graded? Once you have seen the prompt, once you have broken down the prompt, analyzed it, and figured out what you're writing about, and what your purpose for writing is, and who's going to be your target audience, you have to start thinking about putting that paper together so that it will be scored, and you will get a passing score. Actually, let's pass out these. So I'm going to give you a copy of the grading rubric that we use. This is used by the state to score their writing. And you'll see that there across the top you have the score of a 4, a 3, a 2, or a 1. And I tell the children, go ahead and bold it back. You want a score of a 4, the highest score you can. And then I show them voice. That the highest score they can get there is a 3. So you want at least a 4 in 3 areas, and at least you want a 3 in the score area of voice, so that you can get the most points possible. So if we look at down the side and look at content and development, that's one of the domains that we look at when we score. So content and development, then organization, voice, and conventions. The first thing is content and development. That is, did your child write on topic? Okay, so again, we've got to go back to that prompt. And they ask themselves, did I do what it asked me to do? Did I write about topic? What's the main idea? And so their writing should, all of the supporting details should support that main idea, that topic sentence. So to score 4, it presents a clear central idea about the topic, states the main idea, fully develops the central idea with specific relevant details. Those are all of your supporting details. Sustains focus. We talk about irrelevant details. That means what, Tommy? It's irrelevant.
It isn't supposed to be there.
It's
It
not
isn't
supposed to be there.
to be calories.
Right.
If you're telling me
Doesn't
about your
belong.
favorite food, but you also like hot dogs, that might be a little off the topic.
Right. And when they score editing passages on the second day, they may read a passage that has an irrelevant detail. And one of the questions might be, which sentence includes an irrelevant detail? So then they go back to the passage that they read and find the sentence that does not belong or slightly shifts focus in the story. It may be like the Michael Jordan essay that we read. Remember that one? There was a sentence, and it was still about Michael Jordan, but it did not belong in that paragraph. So it was irrelevant for that paragraph. It was off topic for that paragraph, and so the students had, it was a little difficult. They were like, well, it does still have to do with Michael Jordan. He's the topic of the whole essay, but in that paragraph it did not belong. So that would be how they would check for that understanding on the day of the editing passage portion of the passage test. All right, the next domain is organization. To score a 4 for organization, it has an effective introduction, body, and conclusion. And it provides a smooth progression of ideas by using transitional devices throughout the writing. All right, now I'm going to ask our students, what are transitional devices?
Metaphors, simile.
That's your figurative language. We've been studying figurative language lately, so
Which is gonna come in on the next domain.
you're going to have that. And just
So don't forget that one.
those transitional devices. She knows, doesn't
Yeah.
she?
Take notes.
Say it.
Give her some examples.
Tell your parents. Give me an example of a transitional phrase or word.
But.
Okay, that would be a conjunction. Those are your conjunctions that we use to combine sentences, and that's going to come up in our next domain.
Meanwhile,
Meanwhile,
Where's some more?
go ahead.
first,
First, and we start off with first, next, then, and last, and then we graduate up to meanwhile, after that,
On
during
other
the
hand,
morning,
In
on-
addition.
in addition to. So these are those phrases that we add to the beginning of sentences that take us from one idea and transition us towards the next idea or a new time if we're telling a narrative.
To make it smooth, to make it flow. Because we tell them if I don't put in those transition words and phrases, it's going to sound choppy. It's not going to flow.
That's right. That's right. So, if you'll look at the 3 on that domain, what do you see as the difference between scoring a 3 and scoring a 4 for organization?
Can you see it?
So it says a logical progression instead of a smooth one.
Right. A 3, they're going to have a logical progression of ideas, and the ideas are flowing, they're going in order, but the 4 uses those transitional devices to make it smoother, okay? And also, to score 3, they have an introduction, a body, and a conclusion, but to get a 4, it has to be what kind of introduction, body, and conclusion? There's a key word in that one.
Clear.
That's close.
Starts with E. Uh-huh. Effective. We didn't give Tommy a rubric, and so he's going off the top of his head there, but he knows his stuff.
I was gonna say, he's familiar with that rubric.
Okay, so it has to be an effective. They can't just say, yes, I have an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. It has to be an effective introduction and an effective conclusion. So we work on making our introductions not just today I'm going to tell you about. Okay? So
Hi, my name is.
we talk about hooking your reader, getting your reader interested in what you've written about, and so that they want to read more. That's what we do for our introduction, and it has to state that main idea.
We say 3 would be a boring. You have one. It's
Mhm.
just boring. A 4 is when you read that introduction. Whoever's reading it, they don't want to put it down. They like it.
That's
But
right.
that's how we do
That's
it.
right.
3.
And then the conclusion, to be an effective conclusion, we don't just end our story with, that's all, folks. That's all you need to know about Michael Jordan, or that's all I learned about Michael Jordan. It's going to be an effective conclusion. It's going to restate that main idea, but also tell something about what you've learned or how you feel about that topic. Okay? And so by doing that, you're making that personal connection in that conclusion, and you're wrapping it up. We don't just go home and go to bed, good night, but we leave that reader glad that they read it, okay, with a sense of, oh, okay, that was good. So we really think hard about those conclusions and making sure that the introduction and the conclusion is effective. It's not just there, but it's effective. I'm going to go on to voice next, and again, there are not 4 points, there's not 4 points for voice. The top score there is for 3 points. So we're going to look over at the 3. To score a 3, students must use precise and vivid vocabulary appropriate for the topic. This is where they might throw in that figurative language, okay? But we have to make sure that we choose that figurative language appropriately. We're not just putting it in there. Throwing it in there is probably a bad choice of words for it. We want to choose the right moment to be descriptive, to use figurative language to really add that vivid detail to help the reader visualize what we're talking about.
Over the years, they've really picked up on the planting of the simile, or, oh yeah, they've taught similes, everybody's got one, middle paragraph. And so they've kind of cracked down on that, and we've got to really think about where our kids are putting their figurative language and how effectively they're using it, not just throwing one in there.
We tell them it's better to not put one at all if it doesn't sound right. If it doesn't fit in there, it's better not to have any of the figurative language.
I'd rather them use adjectives to describe than to throw in a simile that doesn't quite fit and doesn't make sense.
And
But we
vivid
wanna
could
make
be,
it- Go ahead.
I told mine today, if your favorite food is pizza, what kind of pizza? Is it Red Baron? Is it DiGiorno's? Is it Pizza Hut, extra cheese, hold the pepperoni, or what, be very, very specific. And then vivid could be also, instead of like,
Brilliant.
you could say awesome.
Amazing.
And also, when
Better
thinking
word
about their
choice.
choice of verbs, instead of saying, she walked through the door, she stomped through the door. How is that different than she walked through the door? Well, she's stomping. I can feel her tension, the anger coming off of her, right? Because that's planting a different picture in my mind than someone just kind of walking. But she tiptoed through the door. How is that different from stomping? So we talk about how our choice of words can change the picture in the mind of the reader. So that's very important. Phrasing is effective, not predictable or obvious. If our students are using those transitional devices to help with the progression of their writing, then their sentences aren't all beginning with the same, I did this, then I did this, and then I did this. So that it's flowing. They're going to get those points for organization, but they're also going to get points for voice because their phrasing is effective. So by adding in those transitional devices, that will help with that.
And your compound sentences like you were talking about, instead of just
Absolutely.
having the, I like this, I did this, I like this, but,
But I don't like anchovies. So we've combined, that combining of those sentences with conjunctions will help also with that writing. And that also gives you credit with the next bullet, varies sentence structure to prompt rhythmic reading. So you'll have some short sentences, some longer sentences, so that will help with that.
And they don't all start the same way.
Right. And then shows strong awareness of audience and task. Tone is consistent and appropriate. So again, that goes back to analyzing that prompt, knowing who your audience, your target audience is, and making sure that throughout your writing that there is an awareness that you are writing for someone to read.
And it's gonna be scored even. And they have 2 scores in each piece to score twice, or am I just dreaming that?
No, you're not dreaming. I want to say 2 or 3.
I think the 2 or 3 scores that read
There's
it.
more than, there's definitely, because there's 2 scores and then a third one if there's a discrepancy.
Yeah.
Let's say this child ended up with 12 points from this score and 10 points from this score. So then the third person would be brought in to analyze that, and that may be why you would have a 12 and a half, a 11 and a half or whatever.
That's one reason we do the writing so much earlier, is because it takes so long to get the scores back, because each and every child in the state of South Carolina that does this writing has their score, their paper read by at least 2 people. It takes a while.
All right, students, you can go and choose your book with Ms. Watson. And I'll go over the last domain, that is conventions. To score a 4 in this domain, this is where this is where most of the time the students are held up and they're afraid to write because they're so worried about spelling, okay? And spelling is very important, and we do stress spelling is important, and we do tell them that you want to be a good speller because you want to be able to communicate with others. You want someone to be able to read your writing. However, we don't want spelling to stop them from expressing their ideas. And so we don't want to hold them back from that, and we tell them to go ahead and write. And my strategy that I teach the students is just, I know that I can't spell this word, or I'm not sure about the spelling, so I'm going to try it, but I circle it as soon as I write it, because when I get ready to edit, then I know to look back to the words that I circled and try to find out how to spell those words. Okay?
So doing this, they don't have dictionaries or anything?
They can get dictionaries and they can use those, but what I recommend for the students to do is to write their rough draft, and like I said, circle the words that they weren't sure about, and then after they finish their rough draft, then go try to correct the spelling and using a dictionary to do that.
Sometimes
We
they'll
can
get bogged
practice
down.
in class. They have their buckets with their dictionaries and a thesaurus in it. And
Sometimes they get bogged down in finding that word or not finding that word, or they can't locate it, and then it takes too long, and then they get upset, and then we've lost the writing. It's been
Because to begin with, to write the rough draft, that's the purpose of the rough draft, to get your ideas down. Then the editing stage is then to go back and find these conventions.
he knows
So,
the steps.
Then we're looking at conventions, and we're looking at capitalization. At this point, your child should know that the names of people, places, countries, states, days of the week, months of the year are all capitalized. Those are proper nouns. We've talked about that. The word I is always capitalized. And they should know how to punctuate sentences with question marks, periods, and exclamation marks, and do that appropriately, as well as when to use an apostrophe to show possession, or in a contraction, and using commas. The use of commas we've really been working hard with this last month, so they should really, that's why Tommy was so wanting to share about using conjunctions and combining two sentences, because we would use a comma right in front of that, right, Tommy? So they have really, and also with quotation marks. If we are quoting something someone said, the correct way to use quotation marks would also be a punctuation that they would be expected to use correctly. Grammar is another area in conventions that they look at. Subject-verb agreement.
When to use was and when to use were.
We were, not we was, and are we, not is we. So we do a lot of correcting that at this stage. Fourth graders sometimes get that confused, and so we do a lot of correcting with that. But that verb tense, using past tense correctly, those kinds of things they'll be looking for in that grammar. And then, of course, spelling is part of that as well. And the key for spelling is, if I can read your writing with no speed bumps, okay, I can get through and I can figure out what you were trying to spell, you're going to score probably a 3, okay? If there were words that were what we would call basic sight words, if they're spelling they, T-H-A-Y,
Or and, A-N.
or
I-N.
even I-N, they're not going to score high. They're going to score maybe a 2 or a 1 there, because those are words that they should know how to spell definitely by 4th grade.
Yeah.
So if it's a word, maybe they're trying to spell adventure, and they misspell that, but they get most of the letters, or they know they're getting those hard consonant sounds, and I can read it, or the scorer can read and figure out that that's the word they were trying to spell. They're not going to hold that against them like they would if they're misspelling the word they, okay? Because that is grade appropriate at this grade level, words that they should know how to spell by now versus words that, to use the word adventure, that's better than That's not what we consider common language, and so that would not be held against them, that they're trying to use that bigger
Yeah.
vocabulary.
It's better to misspell adventure than to use trip and spell it right, I would think.
Mhm, exactly.
Yeah. As I said, if it's more than a 3-second speed bump, and they have to really slow down and go, what is that supposed to be? Then they're probably gonna penalize them for it. If they can figure it out on the run and keep going, then it should be okay. But those basic sight words, they need to know how to spell.
I have another question. Like you said, what if it was the topic, what is your favorite pizza or something like that? And the child does not eat pizza. They're just supposed to write it out as the way that they like it and not put that they don't like it.
We tell them,
Yeah, we
it's
say we
okay to
can
make that
make it
up
up.
a little bit and pretend that they do, because, it's about writing on the
topic that you
topic
have.
versus
Take pride
telling the
in it.
truth about it.
Right,
We just say you can make it up as long as it's believable.
Right.
okay.
And they probably won't give them one like these.
Yeah, they're usually pretty general. It would be food, it would be,
Right.
I can't think of something.
Dessert.
They're usually more general, and we're not supposed to know what they are, but they're usually more general.
And we also tell them, look back at the prompt. If there was a word in that prompt, don't misspell the word in your writing. If it's there, go back to it.
You better have
Or
that
if you
free
can
word.
find it on that rubric, because they have that rubric with them. That piece of paper is right there, you know, and using text, your environment, find it, you know, which we have to cover up the walls for
Oh, we
most of
can't
it.
cover up everything though.
But, that one's right there, so
So,
check those basic words.
that's true. And I don't wanna, concentrate, one day is the writing test, where they actually are given a prompt and then they have to write to it. And another day is where they'll read passages and then they are given questions, multiple choice questions. And it may be, what would be a better way to write sentence number 8? And so they look back in the passage at sentence number 8, and then they look at the 4 answers and choose which one is written better. And it may be that they change some wording for more precise wording, or that they punctuated it differently. And so a lot of times, it looks like the same sentence 4 times, and they have to use keen eyes to really figure out, oh, this one has a comma here, or this one added an apostrophe, or this changed the word from is to are, so they can determine which difference it is and which one is correct.
And we have practiced those, I think, till their eyeballs are, gotta be tired, because it's
They're
just,
quicker at catching when they look so similar and I can't see. They're like, Miss Stroud, that one's got a capital P and that one doesn't. I was like, I can't even see it.
and it's easier to, because we automatically correct it. You know, we've looked at them so long, we fix them and keep going, and we don't always pick up on those things. That one's got pretty keen eyes, he picks up on those.
We tell them to slow down, look at it carefully, and select. Sometimes there's a correct answer, but then there's also a better answer. And so to analyze those answers, this one, I know this one's not right. This one, maybe. Oh, this one's good. Oh, but this one's better. And so they've learned how to look at all of the answers and choose the best answer, not just the first one that jumps out and sounds good.
We had that in our social studies the other day. Sometimes they read the first one and go, yeah, that's right. And then I was like, if you keep going, you're going to find one that's a little bit better. We've had that lesson too recently. But I think the most important thing is just that encouragement. Make sure they've got that breakfast, make sure they've got that sleep, and send them off with a hug and a kiss and a do your best. You know?
And you've worked hard all year. I'm very proud of you, and I know you're going to shine today.
That's how we approach it. Y'all got this. Don't worry about it. You're gonna do great.
They've done and they've worked hard. The material's been presented and covered. You know, that day, love them and send them off. The less stress they have, the better off they'll be, the better off you'll be too.